You know, there's not many things as satisfying as winning an exact 70-move-long chess game where you had a great positional advantage that really felt good during the game. You transitioned it into the endgame where it's a knight and pawn endgame. You're completely winning with your advantage. You blunder a draw out of nowhere, but your opponent doesn't find it, but you saw it and hoped they didn't find it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's hop into the game. That was a very interesting intro. So we have e4 and knight c6, and I play d4, just taking the entire center here with my pawns, thinking, okay, let's see what black does, pretty much. Black decides to play d5, kind of like a Scandinavian, except, you know, it's a few moves delayed. This would be the Scandinavian, right? And then we could have something like d4, knight c6, and we have a very similar position to what happened in the game, which is this, right? Looks the same, right? I just play knight f3 and bishop g4, pinning my knight, adding some pressure here, kind of, you know, looking to take, and double my pawns, or just, you know, force me to take this way with the pawn, and, you know, this pawn is gonna hang anyway. So basically, I don't want to allow any of that, so I just play bishop e2. Now, the point is, if you take the knight, it looks like you lose the pawn, because, you know, if you take, right? But there's always this trick, bishop takes c6, check, and you remove the defender of the queen. So if you ever play an opening like this, always be aware of that, because sometimes your opponents will think that they're getting you on this. And even at, you know, 1800, this has happened to me. But anyway, we have bishop e2 and castles, long from black. That, you know, it's a move, I guess. Like, it's pretty annoying because now the rook is barreling down, but like, where is black's development and the center, right? So I'm like, okay, let me just play c3, which isn't the best. The computer says I should play like c4, which I was kind of thinking of, but I didn't really like, you know, the d4 pawn being pretty loose with the knight, the queen, and the rook, and, you know, that. Anyway, I play c3, looking to create a nice little pawn chain here. And yeah, the computer said bishop e3 is top move, and then e5 you have to worry about, and then like c4 or like knight c3 or something like this. And then you have to like, look at this, knight takes e5 is what the computer said. And then if knight takes e5, it looks like you're pinned, so you can't take it, but you get to take the bishop with check. And then if the knight takes, you take, and you know, you're defending this pawn twice, and you just have a massive lead in development with a pawn in the center, and the only central pawn, mind you, and you're going to castle and start launching pawns, bring your rooks to the center, and just have a glorious time. But if you don't do that, if they take, then, you know, it's just knight takes e5 and d takes e5 and queen takes e5. But here, apparently, you know, you're just chilling. You play like queen c4 and, you know, you're going to put some pressure on the black king. But anyway, I didn't really want the center to explode like that because I didn't know what was going on. So instead I play c3 and just kind of chill. And then I play bishop e3 and we have e4. e4 attacks my knight. Okay. I move it. Cool. Now I've got a target and very nice pawns, you know, controlling central squares here. So I thought, you know, he was going to try and take and leave me with a weakness in the center. You know, I would have not terribly minded that because I could bring my knight to c3 and the rook, you know, to the center. But, you know, he plays e4. We trade light squared bishops, and I jump back to the beginning of the game. Now, we trade here and f5. Now, f5 is a very, you know, provocative move, looking to play, you know, f4 in the future and bring the knight out to f6 behind the pawn. It solidifies the e4 pawn, and it's kind of annoying, but it leaves a hole on e5, which, you know, is kind of good for me. And then, you know, the dark squares are pretty weak over here. Maybe not those ones, but these ones here. Anyway, we have bishop d6, looking to gain control of some of these dark squares and try and aim at my h2 pawn. I play knight a3 because I have to get this knight into the game somehow, and it's not going to d2 because the other knight's, you know, camping out there. So I play knight a3 to c2, and then knight f6. If you were thinking, okay, wait, can't black play this and my bishop is trapped? No, because of takes, and queen g4 check, and that's just a fork, and you pick up the bishop here, and I'll just be up a pawn, and I'm about to win this one as well. So that's kind of what I was, hoping would happen. I'm like, I'm going to play knight a3 and hope he thinks that, f4 is the thing. It's not necessarily hope chess, like, because knight a3 is still a good move, just a developing move. I was just kind of like, part of me was like, please, think you're trapping my bishop. Pretty please. Because I wanted to whip out queen g4 check. But anyway, that didn't happen. Well, a6 prevents any knight b5 funny business. So I played knight back to c2 and knight f6, c4. Okay, things are getting interesting. The center is starting to clarify a little bit. I don't know if clarify is the right word because there was no real pawn tension in the center. The pawns all passed each other. Look at this. There's no tension like this. It's all just like wedges going past each other, and that's very strange. C4 and D5. Like, what is going on in the center of the board here? I have no idea. The knights, the bishop, like what is this Tetris piece going on in the center of the board? I play F3 trying to chip away at these pawns. This is a terrible move. In fact, it's like losing for white because of queen H5, which I didn't see and neither did my opponent. So that move doesn't exist. Queen h5 pins the pawn to my queen, which is currently undefended. So I can't take, or I lose my queen, and that would be very sad. Instead, I would have to try and play like h3, g3, something to try and make up for the fact that I just weakened my king for no reason. But both of us missed that, so we have pawn taking on f3, knight takes f3, and now I'm feeling good. Because the pawn on e4 is no longer like cramping my style here, and I've got some nice pawns in the center of my own that black is probably not going to want to, do anything here because the dark squares are going to whoop, 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 and then the knight is coming in, and then it's just that's not what you want. Now here, I was a little worried about the rooks coming to the center because my queen and my, bishop is here, and the knight is hitting my bishop. I didn't want to give away my bishop. The computer says to play h3 and give away the bishop. Now, I didn't want to do this whatsoever. You know why? Because I played f3. And Ben Feingold is, twitching somewhere. And this diagonal is very scary. It's very, very scary. Along with, the knight jumping into these. I don't like these dark squares and the fact that black has a dark squared bishop. It's very, very not pleasant, looking at all. But the computer says it's fine. Instead, I play bishop d4, trying to keep my dark squared bishop on the board. Now, it's bad, apparently, because of, knight e4, and this knight is really hard to kick away because it's just supported here, and you have to play h3, kick the knight back. But then, apparently, whoa, there's h5. There's a fishing pole idea here. Point being, if you take, you're completely lost because your knight is under attack. And what are you going to do? You have the bishop, the rook, the knight, the queen coming in. You're getting checkmated. The rooks can double, and you're not getting out. Wow, I did not see that. That is terrifying. Look at these pawns. Oh my gosh. Well, good thing that didn't happen. Gosh, knights are scary. Look at the knights. Anyway, bishop d4, and we have rook d to e8, hitting my queen, and now I'm chilling. Now I'm kind of chilling, like a villain. Because sure, he's got the open e-file. I can bring a rook to the e-file too. You're not special. And, I'm chilling. I got my dark squared bishop hanging out. I want to play c5 at some point, d6 maybe, b4 if he'll let me. I'm going to bring my knight around if I can and, pressure the pawn here, jump my knight in here if I can. I've got ideas, right? I'm flexible here. Not like a few moves ago in the other variations where I was getting absolutely obliterated. Now here, this is kind of annoying. This pressure on h2 is not what I want, but luckily I have the move h3, which just, gets rid of all of that pressure on h2, because now the knight has to move. And after all of this, I get to take on f5, which is very nice move, because, well, you just win a pawn. That's pretty much it. Now, I thought, I was looking at it here, and I'm like, I think I have rook takes f5, and that's like a fork, right? It looks like a fork. Whoop, whoop. But there's bishop takes d4 check, and the bishop escapes. But still, after that, I'm up a pawn. Not only that, not only am I up a pawn, but my knight on e6 is a monster. It is an absolute monster on e6. Also, my camera got a bit dark. Let me make an adjustment here, bring up the exposure just a little bit. I had it on auto exposure, but then it was making it like super dark because the window behind me is super bright. Yeah, filming in this angle is very interesting. But anyway, we'll get back to the game, Stanley. We have knight on e6, which is a god. It is an absolute god. Like a knight that cannot be kicked away by a pawn, and, you know, the rook might have to try and sacrifice itself, but then there's a pass pawn here and like mate coming after that. So like this is not good for black at all. It's +3 for white. We have the rooks doubling on the F file, and I've got a triple stack Big Mac on the F file, and the knight just blocking the rooks from getting into the game at all. Like this is beautiful. I was so happy to have that knight on e6 this game. I was like, you know what? Let's trade the queens. I like my knight so much that I don't need the queens on the board. It would have been nice to keep them on. You know, the computer says not to trade them and instead try something like, you know, queen c3 or, you know, b4 and just start an attack and, you know, try and mate him. But instead I was like, you know what? I'm going to trade because I get this and I'm going to win a pawn. I'm going to win another pawn. I'm up 2 pawns now. There was no way to defend that. If you try this, you hang a knight. So that's not going to work. And there's just nothing else. If you try this, then there's just rook takes f6 and the pawn is pinned, so you would lose the rook. So yeah, it's just no way to defend the pawn. So the knight jumps back to d7, and I take, and now the rook comes down to e2. You know, the rook is annoying, but I get to drop my rook back to f2. And, you know, if you trade, this is just, you know, I'm 2 pawns up in a knight and pawn endgame and should be winning. And I defend the pawns along the second rank. If there was a check, you know, here and something like this, then I can just play like b3, keep it all defended, which is very similar to what happens in the game, which is rook f2, check, king h2, and knight c5. Now, this knight on c5 was pretty annoying. I just play b3, defending my pawn on a2 and just, you know, creating a very nice pawn chain. Everything's holding itself together. Pretty nice, pretty nice. Rook e7 attacks my knight, so I move it. Now, you might be thinking, Stanley, you blundered a pin. Now you're going to lose the knight because the rook is undefended. How could you? Well, first of all, I could defend the rook. Maybe not like that because the knight would fork, but, you know, like this, I could defend the rook if I had to. Also, it's not because of this, which is pretty nice. It's check. You have to take and you lose the rook. Another one of those moments where I was like, I hope he thinks he finds something nice. And then just, you know, left field, I play knight d6 check or something. But anyway, this guy's like 1740, so he's going to see that stuff. And we have rook. That's what sucks about being, you know, somewhat higher rated. Somewhat is the key word. You know, like being around 1800 is like you see things that people would have fallen for or gone for at like, you know, 1300, 1500 even. But now it's like, man, I have to play like good chess now in order to not lose. That sucks. Anyway, we have g4, just defending the knight and also looking to push these pawns, create a passer on the king side here. So he starts bringing his king, and I just start pushing my pawns. I don't care about the c4 pawn right now. Like, I give up the pawn because I just push g6. Like, I really don't care about what's going on over on the queen side over here, because over on the king side, I've got the pass pawns that are just gonna, you know, try and promote into a nice little queen. But, you know, takes. I get that pass pawn and rook g4. Now here I should have just played like g7, which I realized right after I played the move that I did play, which was rook g2. Now this I realized, you know, it's still winning, but it's more annoying because now it's a knight and pawn endgame, and I shouldn't have pushed to g7 either. I should have just played king f3. You know, it's tricky with the endgames. It's knight endgames especially because they just like flop around the board like, you know, fish out of water. You know, it's hard to figure out the knight endgames. But what I should have done is just push to g7 here. The knight defends, so the rook is not going to be able to take that. And my rook is still active and can, you know, do its own thing. Maybe cut off the king on the e file, and I can like march my king up, you know. But alas, what happened was rook g2, takes, and I pushed my pawn to g7, and now the king is eyeing the pawn. I can't promote it, but the knight does a good job of defending it. And if the king were to ever try and like walk down and take the knight, then the pawn would promote. So he brings his knight around and, you know, tries to win my pawn here. This is where I blundered draw. Yeah, this is completely winning. I can play g8 queen, where king takes, and then I just play king e6, and I'm going to walk around, kick the knight out, and win the pawn, and then promote this one, and just have a good time. And I could have also done something like, computer says top move, which is really funny right now, is to make a rook. That's funny. Computer has a sense of humor. But anyway, I blundered a draw. Why is this a draw? Well, knight takes. Okay. Knight takes. King takes. I'm going to win the pawn, right? Not quite. And this is what I saw when I walked my king to d4. I was like, can he take on g7? Because I figured I was going to win the pawn, but I didn't start calculating it until here. I was thinking on his move, and he spent like 30 seconds thinking, and he didn't take it. So I'm winning now. If he did take it, the reason this is a draw is because by the time you win this pawn, the king's going to take this pawn. And you might think that, you know, since you win this, that you're going to be chilling, but, you know, you're going to lose that pawn. And if you did it a little bit of a different way, you know, like if you push first, then here, well, that's losing. But after a king d4 or king d5, right, and you take, then the king just goes here, and this is just a draw. You have to know your king and pawn endgames. It's a rook pawn, and you're just not going to be able to do anything here because it's actually very sad. You stalemate yourself, right? Black's king just prevents your king from ever getting out, and you cannot promote this pawn. And that's why that would have been a draw. But instead, my opponent played knight to f6, which is winning for me. Yay me! And so I play king c5 and give up the pawn on g7 because I really don't care about it because I get this fork and I win this pawn. So now I'm still up a pawn and I don't care about the check. Okay, your knight ran out to nowhere, giving me random checks. Now I'm up 2 pawns, black has none, and we're gonna win this game. I play king c6, right? And I march both pawns up the board. There's no way to stop both of them. Black sacrifices trying to get that rook pawn draw, except it's not a draw because I have a knight. I have a knight on the board, and that means this is not a draw. Yeah, because now I can defend the pawn, bring my king, push the pawn, and then on move 70, black resigned, because if he were to go here, then I just get this check, kicking the king out of the corner, and then a7 check, and I would promote to a queen, or a rook, or a bishop if you want to, you know, try and do your knight and bishop mate, but I don't know if I would have been able to do that. Anyway, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below with your thoughts. Check out one of the videos floating around up here somewhere, and have a great rest of your day.